You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is titled, pretty simply, Go Beyond Your Limits. If you'd like to actually start thinking about ways to go beyond your limits, then keep listening.
Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here.
Okay, so going beyond your limits. I have a couple of angles that I'm going to go in this podcast. You know, as I'm doing these, I sit down and sometimes I start days early, even if the podcast is, let's say, 30 minutes long. It's not just 30 minutes long because I'll start, brainstorming about what I want to do and what I want to say. And then I'll go, well, okay, I like this angle, but I want to add this. Oh my gosh, I just threw off my entire angle. Now I've got to re-angle it again. And when I say angle, I'm meaning ways that I can present something that give you, really, really, hopefully many times, profound or deep or at least worthwhile food for thought. So anyway, a couple of different angles in this podcast, but I want to talk about, obviously, going beyond your limits. Now, I think by this point, if you've listened for any amount of time, you know that I'm not a fan of the marketing hyperbole and the internet gurus and the rah-rah marketing. You can do it. You can win, succeed and achieve. And I believe in you and all that mumbo jumbo. I mean, I'm just not a fan of it. And people will say things, especially you don't see women doing it for the most part. You see young men and they're like, dude, go beyond your limits and no fear and all that. That's ridiculous thinking. It's nothing more than sophomoric motivational thinking. That being said, I'm like, Jim, hopefully you didn't bite off more than you can chew and you can actually deliver what you want to deliver in this episode. And I think that I can. But what I want you to get is that your limits, and I know you know this, but I want you to contemplate this, is that your limits are nothing more than self-imposed, or even more specifically, your limits are simply a matter of your perception. They're how you perceive yourself and what you can and you cannot do. I know you've seen cases of this. Somebody that you think can't do something and they do it. And you're like, how did they pull that off? Oh my gosh. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I want to share a story here. He was in one of my programs literally, I don't know, like 20 years ago almost. And his name is Terry Hitchcock. And when I met him, he was actually promoting a feature film that he was having done about his life. And it's already been, it's been out for, 5, 7, 8, 10 years now. And it's narrated by, I forgot the guy's name, Billy Bob Thornton or something like that. The guy's name is Terry Hitchcock. And what he did is truly, truly extraordinary. And it's something that we say can't be done. Now, if I have my math correct, he was 57 years old. And what had happened, and I'm not going to go into his whole story. You can look it up online. But what he did is he said, I'm going to run from, I believe it was Minneapolis to Atlanta, Georgia in 1996. He wanted to run to the Olympics. He was an older version or around that time. I guess Forrest Gump was a little later on. But he said he was going to run to bring awareness to single families in the U.S. Now, here's the thing. No big deal, right? I mean, okay, well, let me take this apart. Here's what he did that I think is extraordinary, is that he ran 75 consecutive marathons. Yeah. He ran over 26 miles per day. And he told me many times he went over the 26 miles. He ran 26 miles per day for 75 days in a row, no training, 57 years old, and, are you ready? 2 weeks out of the hospital after having a heart attack. Now, people were saying, obviously, you can't do this. You can't, people were telling him, doctors and all of his care, care team was saying, you can't do this. But yet he did it. And I've had the good fortune to meet a lot of extraordinary people, or rather people that have done extraordinary things in their life. Let me put it that way. And I remember many years ago, I was talking to a guy that you may or may not know who he is. He was an internet sensation probably 10, 12, 15 years ago. His name is Nick Vojic. And Nick also is one of those people that does what I consider to be extraordinary things, in that Nick was born with no arms and no legs. Yet he was a motivator to, younger people all around the world about, I'm guessing 10, 15 years ago, because I guess I met him, about 10 years ago or so, because I knew his manager who lived in Dallas, and Nick came to Dallas and I was introduced, etc. But the guy had no arms and no legs, also no self-pity, and he was actually motivating millions upon millions upon millions of people around the world. And, I look at, you've heard me talk a lot from the very first episode about self-image and specifically what is your subconscious identity. And I look at what was their subconscious identity that took them to a place where they could do this. Now, I want to give you a simple story here is, if you've listened for any amount of time, you know that my brother-in-law is a shaman, a sorcerer, a babalao, and a nawal. And if you look up some of those things online, there are very false definitions of some of these things. Like, for example, a nawal, online, the definitions are completely inaccurate because my brother-in-law only works in the light. He's a healer. His waiting list is years long. He's very cheap. People come to him from all over the world for healing of all kinds of things. And anyway, I was with him a couple of years. This was 2 years ago. He and I were on family vacation, and there were just four of us, and we were sitting on the back deck on the beach. And he brought something to me, and I'm not going to be too descriptive here, so I'm sorry for being so clandestine with my languaging. But he brought something to me, and he had me, let's say, consuming some things. And he had me consume something, and then again, and again. And he came to me, and he said, okay, here. And I said, no, I can't. I've already done 3, is what I said. And he said to me something that literally just changed my life in that moment. He said, why are you counting? Stop counting. And I recognized that he was giving me more opportunity to grow in the way that he was taking me through this experience. And I was saying no because my perceived limitations were saying, no, you're done. And when he said, why are you counting? In that moment, I recognized that had I not been counting, then I would not have said, no, I'm done. But I had this perception that I was done because I was counting. So what I want to share with you, and by the way, a lot of times I piddle with headlines, and I was gonna name this particular episode something along the lines of stop counting in your life and start achieving or something. And it's like, nah, that doesn't work. And then I play with them for a few days to find what does work. But I realized that if I'm not counting, I have no internal barometer or gauge specifically to tell me to stop doing something. Now, of course, we want to take into consideration health and wellness and being cautious with our health. and being responsible with our health and things that we do. But when I was looking at it, I recognized that doesn't apply to a lot of my life, nor does it apply to yours. And what I recognized, it's that for me, and we're all the same, is that it's my counting that significantly keeps me trapped in many limitations. And I recognized to bust limitations, plain and simple, stop counting. Let me give you a couple of more tangible examples here. I remember many years ago when I was a young man back in my 20s and even into my 30s and into my 40s, I always had trainers and I worked out. I was one of those guys that I'd go to the gym 5 days a week. Why? Because I was counting 5 days a week. I got to go to the gym. And I was pretty devoted to lifting and staying in shape and going to the gym and taking care of my body. And I remember 1992, for some reason that popped in my mind. I can't remember the rest of the dates today, but that popped in my mind. And I was doing leg presses. And he was pushing me pretty hard. His name was Craig. And he was pushing me. And a leg press is where you sit down in a little cradle and you lie back and you use your legs and mainly your quadriceps to push weight up. And he put some weight on, and when he did, I thought, geez, that's a lot of weight. And around rep number 9, and when we started, he said, okay, we're going to do, for your final set, we're going to do 12 reps. And I'm like, okay. And around rep number 9, I started giving out. And I'm like, Craig, I'm done. He's like, no, one more. And okay, I push it out, bang it out. And then I'm like, Craig, I'm done. And he's like, no, one more. And I'm like, ugh, okay. And I did it. And I'm like, Craig, no, really, I'm done. He's like, no, you're not. One more. And I pushed out one more. And I'm trying to think, are we at 12 now? That's 9, 10. Yeah, we're at 12. And I did it. I did the 12 reps. And something he said to me changed my life as well. He said to me, which I want to talk about in a minute as well, because it applies to our lives in so many ways. He said is that your mind will give out before your body. Consider that. Your mind will give out before your body. And in that moment, I realized it's all in the mind. And something that just popped into my mind as I'm doing this episode is I remember when I went with my brother-in-law on what I call a sacred journey. My family used to go on sacred journeys on every spring equinox to a power spot on the planet. And we've been to Machu Picchu a few times and Haleakala, and inside many nights, the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid, 2 nights inside Palenque, 2 nights inside Teotihuacan in Mexico, etc. But we were at Uluru, which is the largest monolith in the world, in Australia. It's actually the crown chakra on Pachamama, Mother Earth. And when you read, if you read about it, it takes 6 hours for a person to walk around it. 6 hours. And when I was with my brother-in-law, he took off walking around it when we got there. And he took off walking around it. And I literally almost had to keep up a jog to keep up with him. And we walked around it in 3 hours. And mind you, the normal walk time around it is 6 hours, and we did it in 3. And I said, how did you do that? Which is a former episode. And he said, I used my will. Now, the reason I'm telling you that here, and it popped into my mind, is to reinforce that all the things, all of the limitations, and I know you've heard this, but dig into this. There's some meat in this. Everything is in your mind. And I remember, just off topic here, many years ago, when I was creating my company called Mind Authority, which I still have the name today, and I was going to actually use the phrase, everything is mental, as my company tagline. And our friend is like, that's probably not a good idea with everything that's going on at the post offices and places like that. Everything is mental is probably not a good, unique selling proposition for your business. But anyway, another story here. 1992, same year. As I said, I used to work out a lot, and I was working out with my friend Doug. and he was doing bench press. And I said, Dougie, let's put 20 more pounds on your, on your bar. And he's like, mm-mm, mm-mm. And I remember him just going, mm-mm, like that humming, mm-mm, and nodding, no. And I'm like, come on, you can do it. He's like, no, I can't do it. And so he did a couple of reps. I forgot how many reps he did. And he went to the bathroom. And when he did, I slipped on the extra weight when he was in the bathroom, and he didn't know it. And he came back, and of course I didn't tell him. And he'd already said something because he was qualifying. He said something like, no, I've already done 8 reps or 9, 10 reps, whatever it was, 10 reps or whatever. And I said, well, okay, great. You already did it. That's fine. Let's finish up our workout so we can get out of here. And he laid back and he did the final reps, but he didn't know that he did the final reps with the extra weight. So the point is he did it, but he didn't know that he could do it because he was qualifying and quantifying reps and poundage. So again, the whole topic here is the topic is it's your perceptions that limit you. Because let me ask you this, in your own life, as you're listening right now, has there ever been a time, think back to a time in your past, has there ever been a time that you're like, there's no way I can do something. I just can't do it. And then guess what? You have to do it. You got to figure out, you got to do it. And then guess what? You do it. And you're like, whoa, I didn't know I could do that. Now, I think every one of us has had something like that in their life. And I want to tell you right now, just being candid, I think I'm pretty direct by this point, if you've been around for any amount of time, is what I want to point out is if you've never been in the place where you did something that you didn't think you can do, then guess what? Plain and simple, you are not challenging yourself and you are not anywhere close to getting to an edge of a comfort zone. And the bad news is that not much is going to change in your life because by self-image and identity, we live over and over for most people, same day, day in, day out. So until you actually challenge that comfort zone, which is all perception, then you're never going to grow and you're never going to create more in life. Now, I know that I mentioned it was probably 75, 80, 100 episodes ago, basically a long time ago, is about Navy SEAL training. And I watch a lot of documentaries, and I think a lot of us know that it's pretty tough, or at least we perceive it to be tough from what we hear. And 90% of people that start Navy SEAL training, they quit. And I think something like 10 to 20% quit the first week. I mean, it's brutal. But the Navy SEALs have what they call the Rule of 40. And the Rule of 40 means that when you think you are absolutely 100% done, just like I thought with my brother-in-law, as I'd mentioned to you earlier at the beginning of this podcast, just like I talked about lifting weights. Here's the thing. When you think that you're done and there's nothing left in you, you still have 40% left. Just ponder that. Consider that. When you think you're at the end of your rope, there's nothing more you can do. Now, what most of us do is we roll over and quit. But the reality, and I know that many of you have proven this to yourself, is you've still got 40% left. Now, what I want to share with you is basically, and I do a lot of research on things as well, mind-brain research, and what's theorized about this is that it's obviously not our actual output that's limited. It's our perception of what we have left. So basically the perception, which I mentioned perception a couple of times ago, or a couple of times in this episode, it's our perceptions of what we think we have left in us that will either get us to quit or continue. Because so many people, and I've been there, so I'm not tossing any stones, so many people quit so early in life. And I also want to point out that I'm not telling you that's rah-rah motivation. Never quit, win. I don't think you've ever even heard me say in this podcast, you got to win. I don't subscribe to that kind of thinking. But a lot of people say never quit. What I want to say is be smart about that, because sometimes quitting and reevaluating is the smartest thing that you can do, because just because you're doing something and you're relentless doesn't always mean that you've got the best strategy for execution and creating the outcome that you want. I also want to point out that this approach to this mental strategy has done wonders for me in my own life. In that, if you've listened for any amount of time, if you're not brand new, you know that last year I had what they call congenital heart failure. And today, according to cardiologists, my heart's perfectly fine. Whereas, I'm going to go here for a reason, doctors tell people, oh, it's a lifetime thing, and you're going to have heart failure and congenital heart failure for the rest of your life. And you have to live your life like an old person. And, be careful doing this. Nonsense. Because I remember doctors coming in, the chief cardiologist and an assistant cardiologist. And I remember the assistant cardiologist telling me all the bad things that could happen. Like you may not recover and you might only have, 30-40% of your heart function for the rest of your life. I didn't listen. It literally went one ear and out the other. And the chief cardiologist came in later and he said that, I give you an 80% chance of 100% recovery or something. I don't know what it was. I didn't pay attention because where I was is these are all their perceptions based upon the limited evidence they have in the medical community over the last 40 years. And even though it's 40 years, humans as a species are mediocre. So why would I let the world of mediocrity determine their baselines for me? I'm not buying into it. And then some other things happened, and the doctors think it was genetic, is I had a hemorrhagic stroke just 3 months ago. And today, I'm pretty near fine. When I say pretty near, I get a little tireder than I used to, a little quicker, but you know what? I'm stronger every day. And that's the mindset that, and I actually, honestly, I do self-hypnosis every single day, twice a day. I'm healing myself from the inside out. But it's that 3D thinking in the world, the universal perceptions, the universal rules about things, about life, about what we can and cannot do that keep people trapped. Now, this is only a generalization, but when I look at things in the world, if the masses are running to the right, I'm going to go to the left. And if they're running to the left, I'm going to go to the right, because I know many times the masses are running in the wrong direction. And that's a whole different podcast, let me tell you. And, I tend to attract people that are thinking outside of the box to some degree, or they're thinking about thinking outside of the box, or they're thinking ahead of the masses. And I know that, and I'm not going to apologize for that, because let's talk marketing. That's my target market, is people who actually want to think outside of group and mass think. Because if you follow mass thinking, you're going to be trapped in the mass world of mediocrity. And that means for a lot of people, a world of poverty, and a world of sickness, and a world of unhappiness. And the fact that you're here means that you do not want to be in that world. Okay, so let's go back to kind of, as I said, I'm going to jump around a little bit, is counting. Is we tend to quantify and qualify life, and then we also measure it against good and bad paradigms. Because if our quantifications and qualifications meet what we call good standards, then we're good. And if they meet bad standards, then you know what? We're bad, and then many people feel bad about themselves. I remember when I was didn't even pop into my mind till right now, when I was in the hospital for heart failure, not the stroke, but I was in the hospital for heart failure. Oh, and by the way, let me tell these two stories. The heart failure one, they had me sucking on this little thing or blowing air into it, and you're looking for this little barometer thing on the inside. How high can you get the little wedge, basically? And when I was first in the hospital, the first couple of days, I could only get it like at 30%. Now, 1 year later, I can blow the top off from it. But I could do that, months ago because I healed very quickly. Let me point out here where I was going is that strokes are the third largest cause of death in the United States. And again, the doctors are baffled why I had heart failure and why I had a stroke when I'm an extremely healthy living person. To go off topic completely, my brother-in-law said to me, the shaman, he said to me that he goes, this happened to you so that you can grow. And when you can grow more, it happens so that you can help more people. Because let me tell you, being close to death twice and being in the hospital for heart failure, which the heart and the brain are the two most vital organs in the body, that's some serious stuff. And they were challenging, especially they're challenging in different ways because they had different effects on my body. But they happened, and I've learned lessons that I never would have learned had I not gone through that. So if you ask me, because I believe everything's a blessing, if you ask me, would I trade those experiences? Pardon my language, but I would say hell no. I wouldn't trade them for anything because what they taught me about myself and life and deeper spiritual connection and a deeper following on the spiritual path that I'm on and power of the mind, you can't buy that. You have to experience it because we don't learn anything until we experience something. But anyway, we learned all these doctors are telling me this and that and all these numbers. I don't want them. I don't agree. And I'm not living by them. So what I'm sharing with you is what are the paradigms that you're living by when it comes to money? Are you good enough? Or are you not good enough because of the quantifiable and qualifiable paradigms about what is a good income or air quote, a bad income? And actually, I was going to go somewhere else. I won't, because those of you that are extremely analytical, extremely linear thinkers have a harder time with me because if I jump around a little bit, that throws you off because your brain's like linear. Oh my gosh, he went off track. Oh no, call 911. But good and bad. I was going to do a podcast on that soon also. And that's a completely unhealthy paradigm to live by, being good enough because we're taught as children the world is all about good or bad, and we have to live within those paradigms when they're nothing more than social constructs and they're perceptions about reality, and they're not true. Because we're trained as small kids to quantify. Think about this. I mean, even your parents would reward you. If you do X, Y, Z, then I'm going to give you 2 cookies. Or look at this. I earned my parents' love by the quality and how high my grades were, quantification and qualification. Or in sports, what team you're on. And then guess what? When you're a kid, you're taught if you're on a winning team, you're a great kid. And if you're on a losing, sucky team, well, you know what? You're part of a losing, sucky team. And the reality, it's just quantification. So what I want to share with you here is, to simplify this, is that counting, it leads many people to feel either good about themselves or bad about themselves, and good about their abilities or bad about their abilities. And over the years and over time, I've learned is I don't count. I don't count. Well, I mean, you've got to count some things like your money and stuff like that if you're paying for something, but you know what I mean, or hopefully you know what I mean, is that I don't attach value outcomes to numerical outcomes. Because when we count, we limit ourselves, and we count limiting ourselves that we have reached or we have not reached a certain marker. And then again, for many people, that makes them feel, good about themselves or bad about themselves. Now, I want to point out here also, counting, plain and simple, is quantifying yourself. Listen here very carefully. Counting is qualifying yourself as limited when you literally are an infinite, unlimited being. And you look around you, There's evidence of people doing extraordinary things all around the world. We all have that in us because that's who we are. So what we learn is we learn through the quantification and qualification to put ourselves in little boxes. Because what I want to share with you, like Terry I was talking about earlier, Terry Hitchcock, the runner, is the guy was 57 and he had a heart attack. What are people in this society by their doctors trained to think about themselves? But you know what? He didn't perceive himself in the way that the doctors are trying to identify him. Think about that. He didn't perceive himself in the way that doctors tried to identify him and to get him to identify with. And guess what? The guy did something that even I called impossible. I mean, heck, running from Minneapolis to Atlanta, yikes, running 75 miles per, I'm sorry, not 75. That would be a feat. Running 26 miles a day for 75 days in a row. He didn't listen to the mediocrity of people around him who quantify and qualify life. Something popped in my mind many years ago, and I had it on my office whiteboard for probably 10 years. Hopefully you can find the value in this. And it's pretty simple, and it dawned on me one day. And it dawned on me because I was literally being really hard on myself about something, and I wish I could remember what it was because I'd share it with you, but I was being hard on myself. And then something popped into my mind, and I recognized that, you know what? I treat myself like I perceive myself. Consider that. We treat ourselves like we perceive ourselves. And if you treat yourself badly and poorly, that's how you perceive yourself. And that's a reflection of self-worth and self-esteem. Okay, I told you I was going to put a lot of thoughts together in this episode. We're not done yet. But anyway, I'm putting a lot of thoughts together. But if you would, please, let me put another thought in here. There's episodes on Ayni, A-Y-N-I, Ancient Incan for Reciprocity of Life. If you would, please, we're getting close to 2 million downloads, and I know that's qualification, but I'm having fun with this. I'm having a great time, and I want to actually surpass that and reach more people. Mainly for me, you can ask anybody in my team. I never qualify about money or how much money we make or how much. I really don't care. I just want to know generally how many downloads are we at with the podcast and stuff like that. But I want to keep mainly reaching more people. Now, to the Ayni, the reason I mentioned it, all these episodes are work, whether you think so or not. I mean, even if it's a 30-minute episode, trust me, these are work. Or all the time I've got to sit down and think through them and send it to my team, and they write the copy on it, and everywhere they load it and everything, it's work. All I'm asking is if you find value. If you don't find value, then stop listening. Plain and simple. Go, listen to something else. But if you find value, please share in your feeds and with your friends and with your family. And please leave a review. And a humble request, please, if you find the podcast worthy in your estimation and your quantification and qualification, let's use them there because it actually helps the algorithms, which means I can reach more people. Do you see how it's built into our world? I was going to say, leave me, if you would leave me a 5-star review. I can have the most amazing podcast in the world, but tons of not 5-star reviews. And basically, it's also brain-based to some degree because the brain looks for what's called high contrast. But we're rewarded in the world to contrast things and for qualification. But anyway, if you would go leave a very positive 5-star review, that would be great. And it helps the algorithms as best that I know, and we can reach more people. Okay, a couple of parting thoughts. If you want to know the truth, I'm telling you the truth, is that you're unlimited. Now, you hear your parents, because it's social speak, you hear your parents when we're kids. I don't know about you, but I heard it. Live up to your potential. Live up to your potential. Blah. And as a kid, you're like, yeah, roll your eyes behind your parents' back, blah, blah. Or this day and age, if you're kids roll their eyes in front of their parents. I'd have got grounded 2 weeks for that. Anyway, quantification. There we go. 2 weeks for rolling my eyes. My parents, they were strict. But anyway, we are unlimited. We're unlimited. And you hear your parents telling you to live to your potential, but they have it incorrect. It's not living up to your potential. It's basically your identity. So when people tell you to exercise your potential, live your potential, what do we have to do, which goes back to all the ways to episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and thereabout, is we have to expand our subconscious identity, because you can only operate in the world and you can only function within the context of the image you have of yourself. Let that settle in. I told you I was going all over the place in this episode like a bumper car, so I apologize for that, but hopefully you guys are finding takeaways. Is that it has nothing to do with your potential, because you're unlimited potential. It's your subconscious identity about your potential. That is what is limited. It's not you who can't do things. It's you and your identity who thinks you can't do things. So here's your weekly transformational takeaway. It's pretty simple, and I'm going to just tell you, if you don't put this out on wheels and go out and exercise it, then nothing's going to change in areas that you want to change. But you will never know what you can do in life until you go beyond your limits. Because your limits, which is where we started this podcast, they're not limits. They are perceptions of limits. And you'll never leave the perception, and let me put it this way, you'll never expand the perception until you go beyond the old perceptions of what you can and cannot do. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on another episode. Do what you can to make it a great day today. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. You know, if you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.